Welcome, everybody, to Fourth and One podcast recapping week 10 for everyone who's listening. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Happy birthday to my wife. It is her birthday. So if you are friends with her, give her a special shout out. Comment down below. Happy birthday. 29 years old, so one before the big 3-0. Okay, let's go ahead and just jump in here. Ohio State, Penn State. Listen, I've been saying this for a good month to 6 weeks now. The only team stopping Ohio State from winning the national championship is Ohio State. The defense is nasty. It's got really experienced, really smart individuals on that defense playing at every single level, D-line, linebacker, and secondary, that it makes it very hard to move the ball. And then Julian Sayin right now is trending towards a Heisman, or should be in the Heisman consideration. His last 5 games, he's just been phenomenal. I don't think he's turned the ball over at all. He threw for 316 yards again yesterday. I clicked on the wrong thing. He threw for 316 yards yesterday against Penn State in a 38-14 win. He was 20 of 23 for 316 and 4 touchdowns. They have 2 NFL wide receivers on the roster in Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. They both went for 124 and 123 yards and at least had a touchdown apiece. They were just dominant overall. Penn State falls to 0-5 in the Big Ten. This is just a wash of this season. They will get somebody. Maybe they'll get Indiana next week. I don't know who then they play. Then they play Michigan State, Nebraska, Rutgers after that. So there is still a chance they can get to a bowl game, I think. Because I think they are talented enough to beat Michigan State, Nebraska, and Rutgers, but they're going to have kind of their best day, both offensively and defensively, in order to do that. So Ohio State is just trending towards a national championship. Indiana is also kind of just trending that way. They are so dominant right now. Yesterday, in a 55-10 bludgeoning of the Maryland Terrapins, Fernando Mendoza was awesome. Again, yesterday he was 14 of 21 for 201 and a touchdown. He did have 1 interception. He was almost perfect. His QBR was 96.1. But here's the thing. They ran for, as a team, 367 yards yesterday against Maryland. So they are a running football team. They want to run the ball, does Indiana. But they have a guy back there who can spin it in for Fernando Mendoza, their top wide receiving threat played some and then left with what looked like a lower body, maybe a hamstring tweakness in Surratt. So he didn't really even play, and they still threw for 221 yards because their backup did get some time. Alberto Mendoza, brother of Fernando. So Indiana keeps rolling on in style and in fashion, and the Big Ten championship game between Ohio State and Indiana is just going to be wildly fascinating. The defense of Ohio State versus the offense of Indiana, that's just going to be wild. By the way, I've made these kind of predictions about a few teams making the Big Ten championship, or not the Big Ten, making their conference championship game on their way to the national title, and then I've just been proven blatantly wrong in the weeks following. So Ohio State and Indiana, I do apologize. One of those teams I made a prediction like that on was the Miami Hurricanes about 3-4 weeks ago. I said Georgia Tech, Virginia, it is just you are playing basically for second place, because I thought they would go in, meet Miami, and get absolutely throttled by Miami in the ACC Conference Championship game. Miami won't even make the ACC Conference Championship game at this point. They went to SMU and lost in overtime 26-20. SMU and Miami, you're a disgrace. SMU ran the ball for 23 yards. Okay? Get ready for this. 25 of the 23 came in overtime when they went in for that touchdown. So I want to reiterate. They had 23 rushing yards. 25 of it came in the overtime to win the game. For those of you bad at math, let me just do that math for you real quick. They had -2 rushing yards at the end of regulation and still found a way to win the game, did the SMU Mustangs. By the way, the SMU Mustangs have the best ACC record since joining the ACC. A team that's not even getting revenue TV share has the best ACC record since joining it. Carson Beck again, 2 interceptions. They ran into a Carson Beck problem. They did that with a few weeks ago with Louisville, and now they did it again today. Kevin Jennings was awesome. 29-44, 365, 1 touchdown. His QBR was 67, but 67 and change. But they don't win that game if Kevin Jennings isn't that quarterback. So he kind of kept them in the game. You can't lose to a team that has 23 rushing yards and -2 at the end of regulation. You're a disgrace, Miami. Your record under Cristobal in the month of November, I think you have 4 wins since he's been there. You're like 4-16. I think I heard that stat. You're awful. Get better. It's SMU's first home win versus an AP top 10 team since 1974. So 51 years. That's awesome. Good on you, Mustangs. That's awesome. But yeah, Miami is out of the conference championship race unless if they get major help, and they're out of the college football playoff. Like 2 disqualifying losses. Louisville's good and SMU are good, yes, but 2 disqualifying really bad losses. By the way, it's Virginia on top of the ACC, followed by Georgia Tech, who actually lost yesterday by 18 to NC State, and Pitt Panthers, Louisville, SMU, Duke all have 1 loss in the ACC. So Miami's 2, so they would need help at the top because the teams they've lost to are now SMU and Louisville. So they would need them to lose at least 2 more conference games and then get help from either the opponents of Virginia or Georgia Tech. So while it's going to be a wild, kind of fascinating last month of the season. Speaking of Georgia Tech, they went to NC State and lost 48-36. They should be all right. They were kind of begging to get beat. A lot of their wins were close. They let teams hang around, and then it just looked like their defense kind of gave up. They gave up 14 in the first, 10 in the second, 14 in the third, and 10 in the fourth. And Georgia Tech respond. I mean, Haynes King was 25 of 35 for 408, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. His QBR was 84. He was the team's leading rusher at 103 yards and had another 2 on the ground. So the defense just did not have a good day. Credit to the NC State Wolfpack, though, because they have now beaten the 2 top ranking members of the ACC in Georgia Tech and Virginia. So that's wildly fascinating. The Virginia win, however, was not a conference win. So it was a conference game that wasn't a conference game. Make that make sense. I don't know what to tell you. So the ACC is going to be wildly fascinating down the stretch. All of these conferences are, but the ACC, Miami out. So it looks like a Georgia Tech, Virginia, and then can some of the other kind of teams below them get some help? Can chaos happen and we get a just fascinating championship game? Hopefully. Alrighty. So then Vanderbilt went to Texas and just played dead for about 3.5 quarters for the most part. It was 34-10 in the fourth quarter, and then Vanderbilt ripped off 21 unanswered, and so it looked like a 31-34 loss by Vanderbilt, win by Texas. However, again, it wasn't even that kind of close. The offense for the Commodores came alive. Diego Pavia was really good, 27 of 38, 365, 3 touchdowns. But again, too little, too late. Texas pulled away. By the way, I didn't have ESPN for this game. Vanderbilt only ran the ball for 58 yards because Disney and Google are fighting right now. Arch Manning, no one was watching Arch Manning because of this, and he was awesome. 25, 33, 328, and 3 touchdowns. QBR at 93, by far his best game. It's Texas's first home game since the first week of October. They haven't been home in a month. It was Vanderbilt's first road game in over a month. They also got back to running the ball a little bit. Texas only ran for 100 yards team total, but they did. Quintavion Wisner, 18 carries, 75 yards, 4.2 yards a carry. So they kind of stuck with it and were able to get yardage when needed. Absolutely. So Texas hanging around in the SEC. Vanderbilt, however, this feels like this is a disqualifying loss from the SEC title game to me. And to me, it's also, they're probably out of playoff contention, but we shall see. Notre Dame went to Boston College and messed around, really self-inflicted penalties all game, but they were able to get a 15-point dub on the road against a 1-win Boston College team. Texas Tech keeps it moving, and now they will be the host of game day for Texas Tech BYU next week. They went into Kansas State, and the game was close, and then they kind of pulled away in the second half. Their quarterback, Brendan Morton, did come back from injury. He kind of has to because his backup's out for the year now, so behind him are just super young players. So he played well, 21 to 32 for 249. 2 touchdowns and an interception. They did run the ball for 187 yards as a team, and they kind of just grinded on Kansas State, who a lot of people expect, including myself, expected big things coming into the season for Kansas State, and that just has not materialized. So Texas Tech BYU coming up next week. The Big 12 standings, by the way, those are the 2 teams at the top. BYU is 5-0 in conference. Texas Tech is 5-1. Cincinnati went to Utah last night and got hammered. It was like 48-14 or something like that. So now Cincinnati's 5-1. Houston's 4-2. Houston lost to West Virginia yesterday at home. Utah's 4-2 in it. So right now we got 3 teams at the top. Right now, if Texas Tech can beat BYU at home next week, boy, does this become also a very fascinating conference. Between the ACC and the Big 12 right now, they are cannibalizing each other, which kind of hinders their ability to get multiple teams in the playoff. Best thing for Big 12 to get 2 teams into the playoffs, in my mind, is have BYU win, go to the conference championship against maybe a Texas Tech, and then Texas Tech wins. So BYU would definitely be a top 10, maybe even top 5 team at that point in time. Texas Tech would win, get the automatic berth in, and then BYU hopefully would also get in there. So that's a best case scenario, but obviously Texas Tech wants to win next Saturday. It's almost the exact same. Virginia and Georgia Tech don't play each other. So, but again, that kind of feels like a one-bid league, especially with Georgia Tech now losing. It kind of seems like both of those teams will kind of enter conference championship week if they get that far as high teens. So it only looks like a one-bid league there. Oklahoma went into Tennessee, and Tennessee, every time, like they were playing the same time Michigan was playing. So every time, though, I would flip back, it looked like Tennessee was controlling the game. And the stats kind of say that as well. They outgained Oklahoma 456 to 351. They had 28 first downs compared to 19. They only had 3 penalties for 25 yards. They were 7 of 13 on third down. Time of possession was about even, but Tennessee plays high tempo, big play offense. Oklahoma had 11 penalties for 104 yards. Oklahoma had 2 turnovers. This should be a game Tennessee could win. Here's the problem. Joey Aguilar pulled a Carson Beck and has kind of been pulling a Carson Beck. Last year, he led all FBS in turnovers. And I'm sure Josh Heupel and the people of Rocky Top were hoping that that was just an App State problem growing as he matured in his quarterback years, but that's not the case. 2 really bad interceptions that I saw And I believe he did have a fumble. He did have a fumble that was a 75-yard return, scoop and score. Tennessee drove all the way down. R. Mason Thomas returns a fumble for a touchdown, pulled his hamstring, so he missed it. But, I mean, Joey Aguilar threw for 393 and 3 touchdowns. They ran the ball only for 68 yards. Oklahoma's rush defense is really good. But John Mateer was good, not great. Not great in the first half. He was good in the second half, kind of came alive, especially running, 16 carries, 80 yards. Passing, though, 19 of 29, 159 and an interception. So nothing great, nothing outstanding. But yeah, Oklahoma survives and advances. So Tennessee is out of SEC contention and out of playoff contention. That felt like that nail in the coffin. Oklahoma hanging on there at 18. The remaining of Oklahoma's schedule is as follows. They're at Alabama 2 weeks. Then they host number 19 Missouri, and then after that host LSU. So if they win out those games, I think they might be in, because then they would have Michigan will probably still be ranked at that time. Ole Miss should still be ranked. Tennessee, we'll see, should be ranked. Alabama and Missouri, again, depending on what happens, they should be ranked. The Texas loss is looking better and better the more Arch plays well and the better Texas plays as a whole. By the way, SEC, Aggies, Crimson Tide, both 5-0 in the conference. Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas are 5-1, 5-1, 4-1 in the conference. And then, you got your 2 losses, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Missouri. So they kind of seem out of SEC championship picture, but all those teams up to Oklahoma feel like playoff teams to me. Vanderbilt, again, it just depends on how the committee kind of ranks them and if they stumble along the way. All of these conferences will kind of figure themselves out as we move along. South Carolina went to Ole Miss, and they hung around for a half. It was 17-7 at the end of 2, and then Ole Miss kind of pulled away late. Trinidad Chambliss definitely has fallen off the hot start that he started, which catapulted him into Heisman talk, and especially my Heisman talk. He's definitely cooled off a little bit. He was 12-21 for 159, a touchdown and an interception. He ran the ball 15 times, 59 yards. But Kewan Lacey, 24 carries, $167, and a touchdown. Ole Miss ran for 258 yesterday. And when you do that, you're going to control the game against a 3-6, 1-6 in conference South Carolina Gamecocks team. And again, this is just how long are they going to hang on to Shane Beamer. Lenore Sellers was good with what he has, 16 to 30, 180 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. I'm trying to spice it up, but yeah, that wasn't really good. So Ole Miss kind of just continues to roll right along with that rushing offense. The defense, if their defense can step up and play well, a lot of things can happen. All right, Georgia and Florida. Georgia gets a 24-20 win. The referees were once again involved in a Georgia game. Hard stop there. There was a deep play, middle of the field, 49 yards completion. They called it, I believe, a completion on the field, and then they went to review, and it looked like it hit the receiver's arms, and it was a completed catch. It was called incomplete. It looked like it hit the receiver's arms, and it was a completed catch. They went with the ruling on the field, which was incomplete. They upheld the ruling. To me, it looked like a completed catch. Florida then had to punt, and Georgia then took that said punt, drive off of that, went down and scored. Georgia, however, controlled the game, outgained them, out first down them. They did have 2 more penalties. They were 7-15 on third down and held the ball for longer, but Florida hung around. That's the thing with the SEC. I feel like even the low tier SEC teams, like the argument is which conference better. It feels like to me the lower tier of the SEC is better than the lower tier of the Big Ten. 110%. 110%. We'll argue with anyone and die on that hill, but I do agree. And Florida is kind of proof of that. They are lower tier SEC, but they hung around. The team also has responded to their interim head coach, DJ Lagway, played much better. Jaden Baugh played very well, ran hard. So they got some nice pieces for whatever coach comes in there next and to move forward, assuming they can keep these pieces, specifically DJ Lagway around, or maybe they don't want to keep DJ Lagway around because in some of the games, yes, especially early in the season, he was absolutely the problem. Louisville messed around with Virginia Tech, got that win. I told you, Utah just bludgeoned Cincinnati 45-14 at home. Houston lost to West Virginia. That's an embarrassing loss because it was a 2-score loss, 45-35. They just could not stop West Virginia the whole game. And that was at home for Houston as well. They got outgained by West Virginia. Houston had 4 turnovers. Fourth downs were also 4 for 4. West Virginia was on fourth down, and West Virginia held the ball. That was their first Big 12 win. They were 0-4 or 0-5. They are now 1-5 in the Big 12 and 3-6 overall. So that's an embarrassing loss for the Houston Cougars, who had a little something cooking here early in the season. USC went into Lincoln, Nebraska, and got a 1-score victory. Shocker? Nah, no one shocked. Nebraska loses a 1-score game. Dylan Raiola did have to leave the game with an ankle injury. He was 10 or 15 for 91 yards and a touchdown. QBR of 82 at the time. The backup was a true freshman. TJ Lateef did his best, 5 of 7, 7 yards. They had to turn into a running game. They were in it until the end. 4th and 1, though. You thought they were going to get it. USC's defense stepped up and made a stand. USC ran for 202 yards. Nebraska's rushing defense is real bad. Jaden Mayava, he was not good either. 9 of 23, 135, and touchdown. Controlled the game barely. It was really the rushing attack of USC that got it done. So kind of all the top Heisman guys had an okay day, except for Julian Sayin. And he, to me, has taken over the Heisman candidacy front runner ship. That was a lot of big words for Micaiah. So I think it's Julian Sayin at the top, and then kind of pieces can fall where they may from there. Gunnar Stockton was in there. He wasn't particularly great on Saturday either, so we'll just have to see. But Julian Sayin, to me, is at the top of the Heisman race currently as we speak. However, 4 weeks to go. A lot can happen. People can make runs. We can kind of get into all that as we move along. Okay, Boise State got absolutely beat by Fresno State. So the group of 5 really is coming down to the American, and it may be North Texas, who faced Navy. It was the only game yesterday which featured 2 teams who both had 7 wins. North Texas got a 31-17 dub. Their defense showed up. Navy was the number 1 leading rushing team in the nation. Shouldn't really, most of the time it is academy schools, but they balled out and played really well, and then they kind of controlled the clock on offense. Drew Mestamaker was real great, 19-24 for 234. They ran the ball for 190 yards on Navy. I was expecting more of a high-scoring game. Blake Horvath for Navy did have a turnover, and that can really be the difference sometimes. So it does look like North Texas might be the cream of the crop there. However, you still have Memphis sitting there. Memphis, who beat North Texas. So I think it's either going to be Memphis or North Texas to kind of take those reins for the group of 5 champion. Conference USA, Kennesaw State already has 2 losses. The MAC has 3 losses. The Aztec, so they're 7-1 as well. The San Diego State Aztecs. So the group of 5 champion I think is going to come from the American and either be the Memphis or North Texas Mean Green. All right, finally, before we get out of here, I want to talk about my team and then give you my top 5 conference national contenders list as I do every week. But Michigan, Purdue, I was watching the game last night. They started 6 freshmen, either true or redshirt freshmen on offense, and it showed. It is 2 step forward, 1 step back all night. Bryce Underwood, they outgained Purdue 398 to 276. More first downs, same amount of penalties and penalty yardage. They were 6 for 11 on third down. They didn't need a 4th down conversion or even attempt. Purdue did hold the ball longer, but they drove down to the red zone twice. Underwood throws an interception on one of them. Underwood fumbles the ball out of the back of the end zone. So Underwood's got to be better, and that was his freshman moment. Or at least it seems like it was a freshman moment. And and I thought that when he had that game finally, it would result in a loss, and that would have been a real bad loss to 2-7, 0-6 Purdue team in the Big Ten. However, Jordan Marshall was excellent. 25 carries, $185 and 3 touchdowns. They averaged 6.5 yards a carry. Bryce Underwood did carry the ball 7 times, 44 yards. He should have a touchdown with this, but fumbled the ball through the back of the end zone, kind of got hit. Didn't do a good job protecting the ball. He was 13 of 22 for an interception. QBR just shy of 48. Yes. Young team on offense, and it's 2 step forward, 1 step back, and the step is giant or bigger than a normal step. So it feels like this offense is going nowhere. This offensive line, for how young it is, because they do have 3 of the 6 freshmen on offense, is very well cohesed and is getting better and better in both pass protection and specifically run blocking. Purdue did have 2 sacks on the game. Michigan did have 3. Michigan also did force a turnover. Derek Moore absolutely kind of wreaked havoc on back-to-back drives there. Michigan's defense was always in control. There was one time in the second quarter, Purdue went on a 9-minute drive. Can't have that, especially against Ohio State. Both starting linebackers were out. Ernest Hausman did play. He was out. And then they lost Jayshawn Barham after the first drive on defense. So I'm not sure if that was like a concussion thing or if that's going to linger as the season goes along, but we need him back, especially for down the stretch, because we play Maryland, who's a very good offense, and of course Ohio State. Northwestern is a disciplined football team most of the time. So Michigan, again, very young. Defense played very well. For how many starters were out, defense played very well. I would really like to stop seeing Samaj Morgan on the field. He had another drop last night. I'm just kind of done with him. Oh, Donovan McCulley also had 1 catch, and then he left, which, again, kind of apparent hamstring injury. So it was young all around. Bryce Underwood also missed 3 passing touchdowns. He had an open receiver, an open tight end, and another open receiver, and he missed all of them would be touchdowns. So again, 2 steps forward with this offense, and then a bigger than normal step backwards. So it feels like we're going nowhere. However, we are still inching forward. The rushing offense is awesome. Justice Haynes also out last night, so Jordan Marshall kind of picked up the slack. And that's the thing with Indiana and Ohio State. They're just healthy right now. Indiana and Ohio State relatively are healthy. And that's why they are in my top 5 national contenders list. In no particular order. Ohio State, Indiana, because I would even say Indiana has better wins than Ohio State, so I would actually flop them in the AP at this point. However, I digress. So my top 5 national contenders list are Ohio State, Indiana. Georgia can play any type of game you want. They can play high-scoring games. They can play low-scoring games. They can play at home. They can play on the road. Whatever you want to do. Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia. I would throw Ole Miss in there I would throw Ole Miss in there. Excuse me. I was right. I would also then throw Texas A&M in there. They are much like Georgia. High-scoring games, low-scoring games, on the road, at home, wherever you kind of want to play, they will absolutely play that with you. So those are my 5. Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Ole Miss, and A&M. Alabama's lack of running game scares me. Again, this list fluctuates every single week. BYU's getting close. Oregon's on the outside looking in of the top 5. Alabama's right there as well. Notre Dame, I would just like them for them to look awesome. So we'll just kind of have to see as it goes on. Committee rankings come out on Tuesday, so we'll see what the committee thinks. But those are my top 5. Thank you for being here. Till next time, everyone. Wash your hands, you filthy animals. I'm off next week, I should say that, because I'm going to Alabama, LSU. So that should be exciting. So I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye.